Right, so this is part 2 of making our tree, and you can see that from the previous video I'd made just this little twig with some leaves on it, and I made a whole load more of these. So I've got a selection. What I want to do next is just to attach these parts together, because I want to scatter these. In fact, let me show you what we're going to do. We're going to create something like this. So we're going to make a branch, and then we're going to scatter these twigs, so scatter these objects over that branch. So this is one that's kind of done. This is a branch that's ready to go. I'll show you how to make this branch in a second, although it's pretty simple. But yeah, in order to scatter these across this, we need to make sure that our pivots are in the right place. So our pivot needs to be where we want it to kind of scatter from. So we want it to be at the base here, and we just need to attach these together. So you just go to attach that one and that one and that one, so that they're one object. Okay, so that's what I have done with all of these. They're each put into one object, and they've got their pivots set to the base of them, ready to go. Okay, so the next thing to do is to make a branch. So I've got a couple ready to go. What I suggest doing is to make a probably 2 or 3 branches. So I would have one branch that is very full, so very like leafy, I guess, and then have another one that's slightly smaller. So with this one, you know, I could use this to kind of stick it coming out of the side of one of these. In fact, I'll explain that when we get to that point. But yeah, I usually have 3. So I have one that's very full, lots of kind of detail in it. So that's going to be this one. So I'm going to scatter a load of these leaves onto this. Then I'm going to have a slightly smaller one like this, and then I'm going to have another one that I'll make now that is more barren, I guess. So it's just mostly the wood with a few leaves, and then you can scatter those around the bottom of the tree, where the leaves will be a bit more dead because there's less sunlight getting onto them. Okay, so to make this branch, we're just going to use the branch tool again. So I'll just get a box and draw out a very small little box like that, and then collapse that to an editable poly, and then get the branch tool. And to get good result, I recommend you just play with these settings a little bit. So I think when you start this up, your settings will be like this. So you can get to the settings just by dropping down that where it says poly draw there. Personally, I like to have the minimum distance a little bit lower. That means that the distance between the segments from there to there will be a little bit lower. I also don't want the branch to taper down quite as much, because branches they won't go to a sharp point at the end, or at least they won't they won't go to a very sharp point. Basically, I think if you set that to about 50, you get a bit of a better result, or minus 50 I should say. Okay, so now we can just take our branches and start drawing this. So one thing that I really should mention here is don't forget about your reference images. So get something like this open. What I'm making is this from about here to the end here, or maybe making this piece here, or maybe making this piece here. I've got this reference open on my other screen, I really recommend that you get some reference like this, and just try and copy that fairly exactly when you're making your branch. Otherwise you'll end up with quite unrealistic results. So yeah, I'm just going to carry on making this with the branch tool. So I can draw another branch coming off that one. In fact, looking at my reference, it looks like it should come up more in this direction. So just keep on drawing these, and then you can draw other smaller branches coming off these ones like that. Some of them you might want them to come a bit forward rather than sideways, like that. What I also like to do is just to go and put some little bumps and knobbles and stuff like that onto the branch, so you can see where I've done that here. This is, I'm going to turbo smooth this in a second. If I can do that now, so let me just turbo smooth that. I think these little bits just add a bit of realism to it. But let's finish this one off. In fact, I'll pause the video here. Just finish making this using a reference, and make 3 versions of it, or at least 2 versions anyway, because you'll definitely want some variety rather than just having one texture, and you can make them slightly different sizes as well. That's fine. Okay, so those are finished-ish now, and like I say, I'll just put turbo smooth onto both of these. Okay, so the next thing to do is to paint our leaves. Just get this one and move it out of the way there. In fact, let's just stick this onto a new layer. So I'll just call that branches done. And stick that one in. Let's hide that off. Okay, right. So everything should be set up to go. What I recommend you do is just get these little twigs that you've made, make a copy of them. It's just always a good idea to keep to keep an extra version of them in case something goes wrong. I'll stick those into that layer as well that's hidden. So I've just got these. Right. So what we want to do is we're going to use these this object paint tool. It takes a little bit of messing around. Well, it takes quite a bit of messing around actually. So there's not too much of an exact science for how to do this. But essentially, if we take all of the objects that we've got, one thing I should say as well is if you haven't, just reset the X form on these. Again, it's just one of those things that's always worth doing before you move on. So if we select all of the objects that we want to paint, so we want to paint these objects onto this object. So if we get these and we want to edit this object list, so if you go to Object Paint and then to this little list icon, Edit Object List, and then we can add the selected into there. So I probably should have given these a decent name, but that'll do for now. What I want to then say is I want to, if I come to here and drop down this little arrow, I want to say that I want to paint with the objects that are in my list. So not with the selected objects, but with the objects that are in my list. I also want to say that I want to paint on the object that I've got selected. So I'm going to select this object, and then when I start painting, it should paint these onto my selected object. Okay, so I can do that now. So paint with objects in the list. I've got this one selected. Now if I start click and drag on this object, my leaves will appear on there. Okay, so let's just undo that. There's a couple of more settings that we need to sort out. So if I drop down this box here where it's got the list of my leaf objects, I just want to say paint them all, but paint them randomly. So now if I paint, I should get a random selection of different leaves appearing. Right, the next thing that we can look at is the spacing. The spacing's far too narrow on these at the moment, so let's just increase that, like that. So maybe up to 15. It will completely depend on how your units are set up and stuff in Max, so you know, you just move your spacing to whatever looks correct. The next thing that we want to do is just start to mess with some of these settings. So first of all, we can turn on random scale. So at the moment this is going to scale these from 20% or 0.2 of their original size to 2 times their original size. We actually set these up to be about the correct size in relation to our branch, so we probably want them to range from maybe about 70 to about 110, something like that. So now they're not too massively large. Then it's a case of these scatters, you want to keep these to 0. If you turn these up, it'll move away from the object, which obviously we don't want, so keep those at 0. For some reason that's decided to do that. Fine. Right, the main thing that we want to do then is to play with these rotation settings. As we play with these, we'll get the leaves starting to point in the right direction. So we want them to probably point up a little bit like that. What you can do, once you've painted a few on and you're happy with where they're positioned, so they look alright to me, you can just press this tick, and what that'll do is it'll commit those changes. It's kind of like it's baking that selection down. So now if I move any of these, it won't affect the ones that we've painted on, but if I paint some more on, like that, then it will select those, it will affect those. So just keep on painting a few on and then baking it down, or you know, pressing that little tick to commit those changes once you're happy with it. The other thing you can do is you can come out of Object Paint at any time you want and just grab one and rotate it manually, like that. So yeah, I mean, essentially, don't expect to do this completely procedurally. You're going to have to come in and move some of these things a little bit, leaf by leaf. It takes a while to paint them on in a realistic manner. Just concentrate one branch at a time. Okay, the other thing that we need to do is I've got a tiling twig material set up somewhere, so let me just unhide this. So I set up a tiling bark material onto this, and you can see that in fact that's not the best material, I'll probably change that in a second, but you can see that my UVs aren't great, but it's just the amount of time you'd spend UVing this correctly is not worth it. I've actually stuck a Pro Optimize on this as well. If I just go to my material editor, I think this is probably the material that I want actually. Yeah, that's probably better. So let's just put that onto these twigs. And just to unwrap it a little bit, what I'll do is just stick an unwrapped modifier on, and then I'm just going to planar map the two sides. So I'm going to take everything on the front, so just drag the box around all of them, then just planar map. Then I'll just invert that selection so that I've got all the ones selected around the back, and I'll planar map those as well. So I come into my unwrap now, you can see what that's done. Okay, so we want to relax those. Let's just relax them by face angles, or by poly angles as it is now. Let that relax out a little bit. Let's just take the turbo smooth off and then unwrap that first, otherwise it's going to take for ages to relax. Okay, so let's invert that and then planar map the other side. And then that should be hopefully a bit quicker. Okay, and once that's relaxed out, you can just come in and scale that until your bark looks about the right size. Looks good like that. So let's just collapse that back down. And there we go. So, like I keep on saying, the unwrap is far from perfect, but it will do. You won't just, when we bake this texture down, you just won't be able to tell. You won't notice those little, these little stretching parts. If we really wanted to, we could always paint these out in Photoshop as well. But I don't think it'll be worth it. So let's put our turbo smooth back on now. You can see that looks pretty decent as a branch. Let's just do the same with this one. So I'll delete the turbo smooth and unwrap. Get all the polys on the front, plane and projection, best align, then Control I to invert my selection so I've got all the ones selected like I did before, plane and map, best align, and let's go into our unwrap, so Control A, select all, and then go to relax, that's up there, I've got a hotkey for that. And relax by poly angles, let's just turn the amount up a bit and let that relax. Okay, and then finally, let's just scale that up. So. And then collapse back to inevitable poly, stick a turbo smooth on, and job done. Right, so let's save this document, and now I'm just going to finish painting my leaves onto my branches. Like I've said before, what I'm going to do with this branch is I'm going to leave it quite a lot more sparse than the other two, just so that I've got some variety when I'm building up my actual tree. Okay, so I've finished those branches. So we've got this one that's kind of quite full of leaves, and then this one that's a bit more dying, I guess, or it's received less sunlight. Right, so let's get these out of the way. So I've got 3 branches now, and what I want to do is to attach these together so that they are just one thing. So Okay, so at this point I recommend you save this file with a new name just so that you've got this to go back to if you need to. What I'm going to do to attach these is just going to grab, what's that? Let's go with that. I'll just grab all of these and I'm just going to put them, just grab all of those and isolate that selection. Then if I go and select the actual branch, let me just collapse that to editable poly, and I do attach list, so just that little button next to it. The only things that should appear in this list now are things that are in this isolated area. So then I can just attach that one like that, and then unisolate, that one, isolate, collapse that, attach list, select all, attach. Just give that a second to do that. Okay, that's that one done, and same with this one, so grab that, attach list, select all, attach. And there we go. Right, what I want to do now is to arrange these into a bit of a texture sheet. First thing I want to do is what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a plane on the ground. And the reason that I'm making this plane is just so that I've got a square to match this up. So get rid of those. Oops, sorry about those. Let's just make this 10 by 10. It doesn't matter what you make this, just make it something so that it's a perfect square. And I should put this at 0, 0, 0, move it down a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to go and rotate that one down 90 degrees. Rotate this one down 90 degrees. And this one back so that will become a little bit. Okay, so if I go to my top view now, and let's get rid of this annoying grid, then I'm just going to assemble this. So let's grab all of these, scale them up a bit. So I'm just using this square here as a bit of a guideline. In fact, let's change the colour of that so it's easier to see. Let's make it red. Okay, so this one, basically I need to fit these in as best I can. So that one can go round there, and it could probably fit in there somewhere. And this one probably fits up there. Okay, so this is just going to take a bit of messing around now until it's a bit like packing UVs, I guess, and I'm just looking for the best way to pack all of this in. The other thing that I need to be careful about is that I'm going to want to be able to cut these things out quite easily from the so once they're baked onto one texture sheet. I don't want this at some, I don't want this something like this so that when I cut it out I have to cut down here and across there. Ideally it'd be nice to just cut it in a straight line. So I will put these together and I'll pause it and come back once I've done that. Okay, so here we go. I've placed them as best as I can, and I'll just show as well, I've just cut this plane The only reason that I've done this is just so that I can, to sort of give me some guidelines, so that I know how that I can easily split this up into 3 different meshes once the texture's baked. So I could possibly actually make this a little bit wider and use up a little bit more of that room there. Obviously I don't want to scale stuff non-uniformly too much, because my leaves will all start to go out of shape and it'll start to look odd, but I think I can go a little bit. So if you've not kind of understood exactly what it is that we're trying to achieve, hopefully that image should give you an idea. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to bake a diffuse normal, maybe a spec, but yeah, certainly a diffuse and a normal map. So our diffuse map is going to pretty much look like this. So I shall stop this video here and do the baking in the next video.